Yeah, tell me about your businesses. When did you start your business, and where did the impetus come from?
I was doing advertising for 10 years up in Charlotte. I've always been very goal oriented. I don't believe you can hit a target unless you actually can see it in front of you. So I set all my goals. I became the top rep within the region within the first couple of years, and then became the top in the nation, I think, year 5. And by year 7, I was top in print and digital.
So this was for a national media.
This is the world's largest media company.
Okay.
So I busted my tail. There was a lot of people that were far more qualified than I was.
And somehow you managed to hit those numbers in the Charlotte market?
Charlotte's a C market, too.
And that would have been
tough.
Like what years?
That would have been from 2001 up until 2009.
Okay. And so for those who aren't aware, possibly, Charlotte was not what it is now between the years of 2001 and 2009. It was basically still a kind of a sleepy backwater town.
It was a C market for sure.
Yeah.
And I started having panic attacks. Everything that I thought that I'd wanted, I'd accomplished. You know, you've got this vision whenever you're planning out your career. This is what you want to do. And I was doing all those things. I had the money. I had, the family. Everything was laid out. And for some reason, I was having panic attacks. And couldn't figure out what it was. And I started praying about it. And I had invested into a lawn care company for a friend of mine, and he ended up getting, I think it was a DUI or something, and he ended up going to jail for a little bit of time. So I was cutting grass on the weekends. So what I found while I was cutting grass on the weekends was it was very relaxing. So I decided to leave my profession, not pay myself for 5 years, and start a lawn care business.
Oh, because you really enjoyed. Now, I enjoy cutting my own grass on a Saturday. Yeah. It's something else to take that and turn it into a profession. But I understand it's like there's something very like meditative about it almost. You're like in a separate zone.
Yeah, and it gave me the free time to be there with my boys as they were growing up. While I was accomplishing things in my career, I wasn't being the man that I wanted to be as far as a family man. Yeah. I was always traveling. I was always working. But, of course, with my drive, I couldn't leave it as a small-time loan maintenance company. I grew it into one of the larger companies in the area. I learned very quickly that my specialty is in marketing and advertising, not management. Kind of grew too fast. But while I had the lawn care company, a friend of mine was splitting up with a partner in his heating and air business, so invested and took over a heating and air business. And then the opportunity came to open a mulch yard on Mount Gallant Road. And whenever I looked at the numbers, it just, to me, even if no one came, we were covering our cost at that time because it was so cheap at that time. So I went ahead and opened the supply yard. And then once I started doing that, I realized I enjoyed that better. That was more of the marketing, the advertising. I could coach some of the landscapers around here and give them advice from my experience, help them avoid some of the pitfalls that I ran into. And I really enjoyed that. We've had that for 6 years now. Now I'm just the landscaping we should be done with by the end of the year, selling off the rest of it. The landscape supply will be moving that company, and then the heating and air will be restructuring as well.
Now, I'd be remiss if we didn't mention the name of all this. So the name of your 360.
360 Supply, 360 LLC is the company that owns 360 HVAC and 360 Lawn Care.
So you started out in lawn service and then got into all these other services. Is that sort of where the name 360 came from? Because 360 is kind of all the way around everything.
Well, being an advertising, I originally wanted to name the company 180 for We'll Turn Your Property Around. But before there was a big green K, or before these plumbing companies started doing everything, my goal was to be a local contractor that doesn't necessarily have to provide all the services. So with the supply yard, we tell people, even if we can't provide it, come up there. We'll give you cards that we recommend. So it's like a local Angie's List. These contractors are people that we know that we haven't had any complaints on. And as we're feeding their businesses, of course, it all comes back to us. But my original vision was to have one main company and then have a plumbing, a heat and air, painting. I wanted all of the different divisions to be one. And I realized how difficult that is just trying to run so many employees in lawn care. And right now, you just can't hire hourly employees.
So it sounds like throughout that time, so I mean, when you were in your previous career doing advertising, it sounds like your values just were not aligned with what you were doing. You weren't getting the time with your family. You weren't doing other things. And knowing you, I'm sure there was that impulse to like help in the community or be, to be a net benefit to the area surrounding you. How did all of those things change, and how did you kind of realize those other values while you were kind of opening your business? Because opening a business is hard. Like,
yeah.
How did you make time, and like, what was your process for doing those things?
Like I said, I believe in hard work, and I never really plan things out. I just go where I feel like I'm being led to go, and I jump in and I figure it out. But the one thing I did know was that money is not what's most important to me. Mm-hmm. I felt like I had the money and had all those things, and I just wasn't happy. I was a lot happier whenever my kids were growing up watching PBS, and I'm out there cutting grass for 12 hours a day. That was probably some of the happiest times of my life.
Yeah.
But then as I started getting involved and being, while I was doing my career in Charlotte, I wasn't as focused on what was going on locally. But then once I started running my businesses here, I got involved, became president of my HOA, started realizing some of the problems, and that got me more involved in politics. And I got very interested in politics, and I would attend the GOP meetings whenever I was in my early 20s, but I just wasn't very active. It was just kind of sit back, watch, and learn. And Paul Lindeman, who was on York County Council, was somebody I went to high school with, and I always admired that he was so young and was able to step up and get elected.
So did you talk to him about it?
I did. Well, I talked to him about it afterwards, not before I filed. Mm-hmm. So whenever it come to filing, that's another one of those faith things where I told my wife that I felt like I had a call in to do so. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind because I knew about state, I knew about city, but I had never attended a county council meeting or really understood what happened on the county level. And she told me to pray for a sign, and 2 days before the filing deadline, I had to show up at my yard. 2 employees had called out. I'm opening it up, trying to rush while contractors are waiting, and one of the contractors said, if you know anybody will run against this guy Blackwell, you let me know. And I took that as a sign, drove down and filed. I didn't know I had to choose Republican and Democrat. I didn't know I had to pay a fee. I didn't know any of that. But the way I do everything is, I don't want to say I fly by the seat of my pants, but I go solely based off of faith.
And one thing, as an outside observer, a big part of that too seems to just be openness. Like you've kind of been very open and transparent, whether it was way back when you were running your first campaign and you just decided, I'm just going to put everything out there. Like
taking the Eminem approach.
Yeah, there's no hidden agenda. We're just going to err on the side of just putting it all out there. And part of that was like the time period, right? Because it was during COVID. And so, you were kind of forced to run a online candidacy, which, thankfully you had plenty of experience in, digital marketing and those kinds of things. But that was novel at the time.
Yeah. My favorite part of that was the WRHI interview. I think my first one. And Manning Kimmel said, so you agree with Britt? You wouldn't change anything that he did, because I don't believe in playing Monday morning quarterback. I'm never going to sit here and bash someone for what they did in the past. Bottom line is, let's look forward, use the history, and see how we can move forward. I'm not interested in trying to complain about what someone's done in the past. But he said, so you wouldn't change anything, you agree with everything, so you just want us to vote for you because you're younger? And I said, yeah, pretty much. But I've always tried to take that honest approach. I tell people it took me 20 years to become a Christian. Because I felt like everyone was either perfect or a hypocrite, and I couldn't be either. And I feel that our community, our country, we all lack grace. We're all trying to act like we're perfect. And until we start having people own their mess and realize that we're all a mess, then nothing's going to change.
So